Hey, it's the last passive AD FNATIC upset, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
I don't really have any questions about Summer Split. I think we just go to when you join G2, right? Let's just skip. Let's get there.
I'm done. I'm really down to skip that one.
But here's the thing, though. When you get the job in G2, does that mean that G2, someone within G2, saw what you did with Schalke? Remember they actually they scouted you. They wanted you specifically. Do you think you were top of their headhunting list?
Yeah, I think at the time, Caps and I think actually Rekkles, but I think had worked with me. Obviously, Rekkles didn't end up staying on that roster. I was on the short list. I think I'd also built up a pretty good reputation from all of my time with Schalke for sure, because we had one of the lowest budgets in the league, and we're like almost making worlds every single year. And before that, I was really good on FNATIC as well. So I was on the short list of coaches. I think people said it was also Cadril was the other one in running for that.
Yes.
Was in the running for that job, and yeah, like when I joined the team, the roster was completely not set at all. So it was like, here's the team, help build the roster, help set up everything. It was a pretty cool project.
One thing I do have to ask, I've asked you it on a talk show, but those are years gone, mate. No one goes back and watches talk shows, sadly. I've put it to you. It's a great question from a narrative perspective, right? People will forget this now, Dylan, because he's done all this great stuff. So now we can talk and they'll be going, yeah, of course he was in FNATIC. No, what people did was they went like this. No, Dylan Falco was in the season 7 one, and then Youngbuck came in, who'd won all those G2 championships, and then he was like overseeing the FNATIC one, so they kind of give him the credit. And then Youngbuck obviously stayed while FNATIC was still good, and you went away to Schalke. So to a fan, it's sort of like, oh, you were, what did you do? They can't know because they're not in the team. When you get to be the head coach of G2, this is kind of like your chance right now. Now they're all just going to be one on your watch. There's no Youngbuck to say it was him doing it. That narrative can't even exist, right?
Yeah, but which is a bit weird because from my perspective, the team I work with on G2, having Romain with me, is actually very similar to the sort of setup I had on FNATIC with the Youngbuck, in the way the roles are kind of aligned and what they do for the team. Obviously, Joy was a lot more involved in draft and the gameplay side of the team than Romain is. But as far as like the way the staff is structured, it was actually similar to that. So I feel myself working under a very similar system that works so well for me. But I guess from the outside perspective, it might be a bit different. But I actually don't really think about the whole like reputation or all that sort of stuff. I just like league and winning.
Did you never have any sort of like, after you left FNATIC, like a little bit of a rivalry with Youngbuck? Like, I want to beat him. I want to show it was me. Yeah,
for sure. But I'm also friends with him as well, so it's not like it's not like a pure rivalry thing. But yeah, of course, it's always nice to beat the former people you work with.
As you say, you were actually able to have some say in the construction of this roster, where some other rosters maybe you were just given. Like, give me some thoughts then, because if people forget, this was a very shocking roster. For everyone now who remembers winning the split, no. At the beginning of the split, for the beginning of the spring, everyone was saying everyone fucked up. They were all like, wait a minute, like, the famous one, like Flakked, the one was there. Well, listen, he isn't fucking reckless, upset, forgiven. Like, it's a very different type of ADC. Targamas is very fresh out of the RLs. You've got fucking Broken Blade back again. There's only Jankos and Caps there from the ones that have done all the success before. Give me some thoughts on this roster construction. What was the concept? Like, what was the premise of how this team would operate?
So BB, I had a lot of experience working with, and I'd seen him beat everybody. So that, and I think even when I joined, BB was already a natural recruit to the team. That was like already pretty close. And the main thing was just figuring out what sort of lane we were going to run. And I think G2 really liked the idea of rookie players. And we didn't really like the idea of a lot of the veterans that were available on the market. And when it comes to scouting rookies, I'm not like, players aren't big names until they win. So if you sign a player like Flakked or Targamas, first of all, Targamas was the best support and the best prospect probably in all of ERLs at the time, but it's still considered shocking because it's not a big name like, I don't know, Mad Life or something, right? But if he's the best prospect, then he's the best prospect. As for the Flakked situation, we tried out a bunch of amateur ADs. And the thing about Flakked is when we looked into him, his performance and stats in Spanish League was just like such a clear outlier. And he was also one of the most successful EU ADCs in solo queue with the most games and the best results over the whole year. And then when we tried him out, he was playing well against Damwon and EDG and stuff like that. So it was like we had a lot of data points actually that even though it felt a bit random, it didn't feel random to us for sure. So yeah, it was like a bit of a risky move, maybe even from an outside perspective, but it wasn't random. I had a lot of stuff we looked into, and we tried a lot of ADs. We played with a lot of players. It was just working very well. You know, when we were scrimming all the world semifinals and finals teams, and we're taking so many games with this roster, you start getting really hyped, and you start actually feeling very confident about it moving to spring.
I think the narrative that people will quickly remember if they watched the spring split of this year is just Caps' narrative. Because what happened was, dude, it looked like, holy shit, he's lost the mojo. Like he's sometimes he's actually, even in some of the games in the regular split, he's just like a boring mage player. It's like, where's Caps? Like, where's the guy who does the 20 and or 0-10, 20 and 0? And even if you remember, in the upper bracket, FNATIC kind of handled you guys. But then something seemed, this is the narrative, something happens in the lower bracket. Suddenly Caps like becomes the god of Ari or whatever the fuck, and then he smurfs the rest of the tournament. What happened in this split?
I think actually that meta was a lot more about bot than mid, other than Ari, which was a huge outlier. It was actually a lot more about like the hyper carry matchups on bot. There was a lot of Jinx, a lot of Fearless, and a lot of the poke Xayah. And I think the team that was going to win that split was going to be the team that figured it out. But this was also a team where we were winning like a month straight of scrims against all the other teams. So we were coming in from, I think, a talent advantage. We were also much more prepared before the split than other teams as well. So I think once we broke the patch, which we did not have for the FNATIC set, it came kind of very naturally that we ended up winning, I would say.
Listen, one of the problems we're talking about this particular MSI is, man alive, the problem is it was the one that was played technically on the internet because it had the lag, and then RNG was in China, even though the tournament wasn't, which I've always said is like, I don't know. I feel like there should be an asterisk next to that whole tournament. But give me some thoughts on this one, because this must be weird. Like, dude, even the idea of playing with artificial ping in a game seems just like, what? What are we doing here? You know?
I don't remember. Was everyone playing with ping?
Maybe it was only if you played RNG or something.
I think it was only if you played RNG you would play with ping. I think
sounds
we really
bizarre to coach that though.
Yeah, it was a bit bizarre. I do remember when we beat RNG on the first day. They didn't show it on the broadcast, but our players went over to where RNG was supposed to be sitting and went and handshook imaginary RNG players, all 5 of them.
That's good.
And the Korean crowd likes it when China loses, right? And they all just went completely crazy, screaming, because it's a bit BM, right? Like we do it in good fun, not in like a BM way, but that was a good one for sure. That tournament was, oh god, I feel like that was such an awful tournament. The format was so terrible. We were playing Australia and NA for a week and a half. Oh yes,
that really weird second group stage, the Rumble or whatever the fuck. I can't remember. It was like a group into a thing and then into the proper. Yeah.
And into a huge, really long best of one format where you play a ton of different games, and the tournament really dragged on. And I feel like as staff we handled that tournament pretty poorly because I think we were pretty good actually. Like we beat T1 and RNG right in the same day, and then we had a bit of a breakdown, losing against a lot of the weaker teams back to back to back to back. And I feel like we really handled a lot of like the internal stuff of this marathon kind of badly. We allowed some of our practice to slip. We started playing a bit less. The match preparation got worse. We weren't handling like the draft issues before they came, and I definitely feel like this one could have been a bit better. That being said, I do feel like T1 over the past couple of years has been consistently so far ahead of the other teams. I know it sounds weird because they didn't win everything, but at least from behind the scenes, scrimming this team a lot, we played them so much at MSI. And them at that MSI and them at this World Championships this year, that is the strongest I've ever seen teams play League of Legends. So the fact that we drew them in a best of 5 in the actual bracket stage, I feel like that was very, very difficult. And I feel like they were a bit too good, even though they ended up losing that tournament.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask about winning 24 games in a row in official matches. Because even though, look, like, take a couple out against Order or whatever, the rest are against, look, EG are the champions of NA, LCS, EU LCS slash LEC, LEC at this time, so real teams, and some of them are against T1 and RNG. Like, to win, I don't think people understand like how insane a streak like that is, because even when people do series streaks, that allows you to lose a game. To just win 24 games in a row, I mean, I can imagine there's even challenges there, like keep a bit motivated, keep them not into the game. How do you keep updating what you're doing's working? Give me some thoughts. And this is supposed to be a very interesting period of your career.
So we actually had to start coming up with some strategies of how to deal with it when we're winning a series, of how we like refocus our draft for game 2s and game 3s. And I think it was a good experience. It's obviously a lot easier to make strategies for when you're losing. But I also feel like we were very smart about draft, and we really understood a lot of the interactions between the champions in that meta. We understood Ahri and how to counter Ahri. We understood the bot lane champs and how to counter them as well. So a lot of those times, those cases, it's just like, if you practice the strong meta champs for like a month straight and get super good at them, you can then start delving into like the counters to those, where the other team's still trying to catch up by playing 4 champions, and you end up in such like a prep draft advantage that you feel like you owe an answer. And it felt kind of like the miracle run from a couple of years ago. We were just very ahead, and we were very I felt very confident always going to every match that our plan had a lot of things accounted for, I would say.
If people don't remember, in the summer, this is when people just recycled that narrative. It's the MSI hangover, because you started awesome, then you had this period, I think you lost like 4 games in a row or something, and it was like you were going down the table, and then you just came all the way back up, and then the joke is it's the opposite of the spring. Then you were supposed to win the split. In fact, everyone said you were going to win the final. Whoever you met in the final, you were going to win, and then you lost the final. So what were the ups and downs of summer?
I think the reason we lost at the start was pretty clear MSI hangover. We're a bit burnt out. I actually don't like using that word in general, but this was the case where it was definitely one of those where we weren't practicing as hard. We didn't have as much passion for it, and playing some stuff that maybe, it's not our best champs, but I think we can play it this week on stage, and then you lose, and you're like, oh, okay, that's not what it should feel like, right? It should feel like this is what we need to do to win, and we're going to win at all costs for every single match. So we definitely kicked that back into gear for the rest of the summer split. And I do think going to the final against Rogue, we were favorites. We stomped them on the week before 3-0. We stomped them the split before 3-0. We stomped them in scrims the week before 3-0. Like, it was just, we would just win against them every time. And I think they had really good prep coming into the match. I think they handled the stage pressure really well. We had a bit of we had some rough discussions after game 1, I remember, backstage, about how we can adapt our draft, which I think really limited us for the rest of the series. And I think I could have handled it a lot better. These big stage and playoffs, best of 5s, I feel like there's so much ability from like a leadership position to swing. And every time I have one of these ones where you lose at the last match, like, I feel like you can always take a lesson of how to handle these, So, yeah.
What about, obviously, in this particular time, even though you had the letdown in the summer finals, I'll always tell people this, even though the score will tell you 3-0, it wasn't really like 3, as in it wasn't they weren't smashing you. They maybe had like one game where they smashed you. The other ones, it was like it was in the game, or there was a chance to win. Like, this wasn't a blowout.
No, it wasn't, for sure.
Because that means to me, I think people actually, this might sound mad, but at the Worlds, obviously you didn't get out of groups. It wasn't like a meaningful run. First of all, that group is fucking ridiculous. Like, you did literally get 2 of the absolute stone cold better teams in the world in your group. And then also, this whole group was messy games. I remember even EG, who bombed, were mixing it up in some of the matches. And in the mid game, these were very interesting games. It was all over the place. The meta was interesting. What did you think of this group stage?
I think that we came in okay for the first week group stage at this Worlds. Our roster was we had a very specific play style, right? We played a lot of weak side bot lane stuff. We played a lot of Stair Fiend. We played a lot of like carry tops. We played a lot of very creative and different stuff. And I think to pull that off in draft and on stage required a really deep understanding of when and how we could pick these champions. And I think the way the Worlds meta ended up going with champs like Caitlyn and Lucian being so strong was really, really hard for us to adapt to. I think if we had a couple extra bans, maybe we could have really funneled the game into these types of games we were very good at. When you're playing against top Asian competition and they play these types of champs, you need to kind of have an answer. And I think a really make or break moment was the fact that the whole year we were playing Senna Seraphine combos against Yuumi. And Yuumi was very famously first picker banned at that tournament, right? It won like 10 games in a row. And we really felt like Senna Seraphine can push Yuumi in, bully the whole laning phase, and you still have a really scaling enchanter moving into the late game. And as long as the rest of your draft fits well with it, you can win. And we played our first game against it was what was it, JDG?
I think so.
Yeah, and we lost that game in the final fight where like the Darius ult doesn't go off, and we like barely lose.
Oh, it was down but yeah.
Rumor has it that it was a bug or whatever, but it was basically one of those games where it was like down to one ability, and it felt really hard to run back more games against Yuumi after that when it's like 8-0 in the tournament, but that was like one of our main draft structures for the whole tournament. So now we don't play Lucian that well. We struggled with it the whole year. Like, it really wasn't our thing, like the carry bots. We tried Caitlyn and it failed, which is another one of the carry bot sort of thing that was like very at the tournament. And now our counter to Yuumi also failed. So we really struggled after that. We were put in, I think, a really tough position prep-wise. It's another one of those ones, just like the MSI, where I think we were a pretty good team. I think there are Worlds at that tournament we could have done a lot better.
Maybe a different group or something.
Yeah, maybe a different group. Like, I don't think we would have won Worlds or anything.
Sure.
But like we definitely
should have been a playoff team.
Yeah, sure. I think if we had beaten Rogue in the finals, but the thing is, if Rogue beats us in the finals and they make it out of their group, then you kind of have to give it to them.
True.
You kind of have to give it to them in that scenario, right?
Sure.
So it was fine. I'm a bit unhappy with how it went, but
right. What's funny is this is where, even though I love narratives and I do think they are cool and I add to them and I reference them myself, I also understand, because sometimes I'm creating the narrative, it's an interpretation, and the more facts come in or things happen later, sometimes you find out like, oh, that was a cool story, but actually it was just a cool story. That wasn't even what actually was going on. So what's funny is the narrative whiplash about this bot lane is fucking crazy, mate, because it starts out like this. Because I'll tell you how it really begins. Because the Spanish fans are so passionate TM on the internet, they would tell you Flakked was the second coming of Jesus. He was everything you could ever want in ADC. He was the best. And if you disagree, you hit Flakked and, I don't know, Spain or something. Who the fuck knows, mate? It was wild. So because of this, as you'll see, think about Faker recently, if there's ever a player gets a bit overrated by fans in an obnoxious way, all the experts and content creators, the battle actually isn't with the player, it's with those fans. And it's sort of trying to tell them, like, you're overrating him. Like, it's not as good as that. And even if they are saying within what they're saying, he is pretty good, the fan just hears like, so you think he's shit, so he's not even good. So the narrative back then, believe it or not, was Flakked is essentially like, he's like the utility ADC. That's why he's playing Seraphine. He's obviously not a man's man, on the big boy ADCs. And Targamas actually was getting all the credit. It was like the Targamas guy's a genius from the RLs. He's playing all these other champions and he's making the combos work in his roams. And obviously he roams because he just leaves that guy bot to just farm some waves, right? And it's genius construction though, Dylan, because they've got the carry top laner, they've got Caps, they've got Yanks. This all makes, to a fan, it's a very neat narrative. It works. The joke obviously being, if you then go to their narrative the next year with XL, Flakked carried Targamas. Targamas is a bum. He has no champion pool. He can't even roam. He doesn't even know when to roam. He doesn't even have hands. Like, the problem with this is, like, neither of these can be true. So give me some thoughts on this bot lane. What was going on?
I think our bot lane that year, I think they're both very good players. I think, like, Flakked, the next year he was one of the better LEC 80 carries, right? Like, he just is. I think the narrative that he was carried or just only got his spot for random PR reasons, that that's died with the times. That's one of those ones where, at least looking back, he's just good, right? And I think Targa probably will show this year that he's also good. He's always the best support when he's not in LEC, outside of LEC, and he wins championships. I think the XDL, the time he was on this year, was a complete disaster of a team. Although I didn't think he had his best games for sure. I think that they did not have good synergy in a way where they could control the game or play for lane. Neither of them was a real natural leader. The way we have it now on our team with like Hans and Mickey is he's just an absolute animal when it comes to dictating.
People say he talks all the time, right? The perception is that he's quiet, but he talks all the time, right?
No, he takes control of the game, and he wants to force to win through his lane, and he will call jungler. He will tell his support when to the gauge. He'll be like, "Come, go! We're going here and going here. We're diving." Blah, blah. Like that did not exist with the Flakked Target spot, and that I think is the reason more that we tended to play a lot towards the solo lanes. It was more to do with their ability to lead the game and their ability to set things up, and not due to the fact that like they can't carry or something like that. Because there was also games where Targa picked Pyke and he ran around the map carrying the game, right?
Yeah, he was killing it.
Yeah.
Right, obviously, in this year, I know it sounds weird, and this always fucks me up. The second Worlds ends, to me, that's like January 1st is when the next is. And I always say last year, but I mean this year. I mean 2023, but earlier on. So if everyone remembers, we obviously started with the weird winter split because we've gone to we've apparently been OGN 2014 or whatever. Now we have 3 splits. So for the lineup for this team, obviously you didn't run it back. This time you got Hans Sammer, who at the time was mad edgy because everyone was like, he's a bomb. Look at Team Liquid. It failed the $7 million team. And then the one aspect that, look, no one can... anyone who thought that, like, Mikyx coming back wasn't a great move, like, just don't bother commenting on League of Legends anymore, mate, because I think this is the year where if people hated on Mikyx for maybe 2021 G2 or in XL, look, they didn't have the team results. I thought it was fucking mega, personally. This year that Mikyx has played for me is a peach, mate. I thought it was phenomenal. What are your thoughts on Mikyx and coaching? Because, like you said, you could have had him at other times in your career and you got him finally.
Yeah, Mickey played so insane this year. It's actually crazy just having a bot lane can dictate game like that and just put so much pressure on the map, and that every other team is just like in fear of and has to account for in the game. Like it gives you so much room for the other players to play and gives you so much room in draft to get other picks or to pick other champions. It's crazy, like the amount of talent I have on this roster.
Is he really the one coming up with these ridiculous, like, I'm going to play Jarvan support. All right, now it's going to be Hylissang. Is he really the one coming up with that or empowering it? What's going on with that? How do you make that work?
The crazy support picks are, I would say, 90% coming from Mickey, yeah. And then the ones that come through are the ones that get through the staff and player approval process.
Okay. Well, yes, some crazier ones that don't get through that sort of get caught in the net. Can you give me one? Can you give me one?
Oh, I actually, I'm not sure. Oh, actually, Twisted Fate support. And if anyone wants to send a Mikyx a message of why Twisted Fate support doesn't work, like I'm not going to explain why. Maybe you can come up with some reasons on your own that it's probably not that good. Maybe you could just let him know to help my case on this one.
Dude, if you asked me to name 50 champions it could be, I don't think I would have put Twisted Fate in that list. Like, that's mental, mate. Okay.
Yeah.
What about then with this team? What's bizarre is you obviously had like generally a good first split, but people forget it was a little bit rocky at the beginning. Like the LEC kind of began a little bit dodgy. What's the story of the winter split?
So winter split is just we scrimmed so many Asian teams, and we found that we could not play aggressive, and we could not play fast enough, and we could not play with dominating bot lane with all these like pushing champs like Varus, and that was the meta at the last Worlds, right? So we constructed a roster and built a team and built a playstyle that could do that. That was the idea, because we felt like we would never win internationally if we couldn't do that. And we really all in on this strategy for like
this is the team that just wins a game in 20 minutes, right? It just snowballs you and kicks out the server, yeah?
And I came in with a very clear vision. I presented to the guys that this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do every single game. And this is what we did every single game for like 2-3 months. Great. And I think it was a very good start to the year. I think throughout the year, it didn't end up being the dominant strategy of League of Legends as a whole. But I'm very, very happy we did it because I think it was a very valuable lesson and helped to have a very fun split as well. It was very, very fun going through all of this early game stuff and also gave us the confidence to do this later in the year when it was needed.
I just thought it was really clever tactically that what you did was you let Mad Lions win that series in spring to give them false confidence and then completely destroyed their mental in all the international competitions. It's genius. What happened in that series, mate? That was one we remember 1 second before that, they were going to MSI no matter what. Everyone was writing the picket sign of like, fuck Mad Lions, because we were all going to say they didn't do anything to get there. Everyone's going to hate them. And then they beat you. So it was kind of like, I mean, by the way, props to Mac. Making that video where they apologised for winning the split is actually fucking banter. Like, that's a very clever idea. I've never heard of that before. What did you think of this series, though? What happened?
I think so. That entire split, we just won a split, just troll picking and crazy picks, crazy aggressive for an entire split, and we won a championship. And we also like don't lose scrims for like 2 months straight. So I think we really let our ego get to us, for sure. The amount of troll picks we had was like unbelievable, especially at the start of spring split. There was a period where Caps' entire champion pool was like only troll picks, like actually only troll picks exclusively. And like we kind of reined it in, but I think ultimately we didn't have a grounded enough the game. We were a bit too aggressive. We were a bit too cocky. And honestly, I also think we were very bad at adapting in some of the best of fives we played and best of threes we played. We went out against Mad Lions, I think, with a very, very poor draft that I was very uncomfortable with in the moment. And I really don't like the decision-making process that led to it. I think we ended up playing Jarvan against like 5 dash champions and like losing matchups in 3 lanes or something. It was just like, it was one of those ones where I went off stage and I knew it was a very bad decision-making process that led there. And it's something that at least we kind of talked about why that happened, and we used that to kind of change how we do our best of fives for the rest of the year.
This might sound very counterintuitive to someone who's not in the industry, but I have actually heard that when you win all the scrims is a very, very difficult problem as a coach. Because, like, for example, everything isn't always going to work on stage and they aren't always going to play like that. But the problem is at the same time, like, what do you really just take what's working every game and smashing people and then just make it worse for yourself? Do you intentionally pick a bad job? Like, it's kind of hard to know what the answers are, right? So how do you deal with this challenge? Because I'm sure keeping people, like you say, of course they think they're going to win. They won 24 games the year before, some of them. Now they're just winning every scrim ever, and then they win the championship. It's easy. They can joke around and pick whatever the fuck they want. The games aren't even close. Like, how do you keep people focused?
I think the first is you kind of need to understand why you actually win a game on stage. Like, what's actually happening, which lanes are pushing, how are you winning team fights, who's like, what are the determining factors of it? Because in scrims, it can be the stupidest reasons why you win. I think that's very important. I think making sure that your drafts are a bit versatile is also really good when you have to deal with that as well. Because the more versatile a draft is, the more options you have in the game. Things that are one-dimensional are more likely to just like randomly fail. I would say, which when you're one of the teams is better for sure. But I honestly think it's one of those problems of luxury, right? Like the teams who win all the scrims and are the strongest team usually just win. And in Europe last year, we won 3 out of 4, right? It's the time that we didn't, where it's like the exception, where you'll be like, oh, it can be bad. It can be bad to win everything, but like, is it really bad when you win the other 3 times? Like, some of it, I think, can just be chalked up to competition itself.
What would you say about MSI? Because the 2 teams you lost to, I will say this, one of the problems you have is this. This is where narratives are also so key, because remember, in a story, it's not what happened, it's where in the story it happens. So here's the thing. If you lose to Gen.G, if people don't know, Gen.G had an extremely like fucking cerebral style of play that was very unique. Like, I don't think Western fans necessarily appreciate it. If they think it's just a boring team, like there's a lot of, it's hard to have answers against that team. And then in the lower bracket, you lost to BLG, and then later they're in the final. But at the time, everyone's like, they're easily worse than all the other Asian teams. Like, they're not going to do anything. And then obviously now we know they were like monster team fighters. So it seems like even the contrast, the spectrum's crazy on this. Like, Gen.G is that team, you know, like play on fucking wave control and stuff. BLG is the Chinese team fighting team that can fight from any angle, any fight, just keep the ADC alive. Give me some thoughts on it. Seems like a challenging set of series.
Yeah, MSI obviously very hard tournament because it's the top 2 from every region. We were playing it's publicized, right? We were playing the Asian teams very close in scrims, and we're also like we're playing close games and taking games in both of these series. It's one of those ones where I think the small skill edges and the small difference in understanding and prep really just makes the difference. I think the fact that we played a lot of very aggressive stuff, but then that meta ended up being Aphelios hyper carry wars was very bad for us. We were very unprepared for that going into the tournament. I think that definitely affected us negatively for sure. We were a bit uncomfortable on more of those bot matchups, whereas if it was like a Varus meta that we had played for most of our time in Europe, I'm sure we would have done a little bit better. Like, for example, we tried the Draven stuff at the start, but the Draven really gets broken by hyper carry comps when the hyper carries and tanks are very strong. If you're playing against weaker laning champions, like for example at the Worlds meta, then the Draven and Kalista sort of stuff becomes really OP. So I think that was a bit hard for us from a perspective. And I think also we weren't too great at the objective stuff. We spent so much time studying objectives after MSI because we realized how behind we were in some of that stuff. But still, despite that, like we were in game 4 against BLG and we were ahead by like 4K, right? Like these were winnable series. So it's kind of sad that we didn't end up taking more games.
When you went to Worlds, because as you said, you really did just win the other ones. You're the best team in summer. There's not that much to fucking talk about there. At Worlds, the question goes like this. Like, I can see both sides of it. Like, on the one hand, like, here's an example, right? When you beat D+, right? Sorry, guys from D+, I love you, Def, but that team was fucking not very good. Like, the fact they even made Worlds is like, that was their fucking prize. Like, that team, based on everything I've heard, wasn't going to win anything. I'm not surprised they didn't make the playoffs. The next game, though, people forget this. Even though now they finished second, Weibo Gaming was also sort of a meme. Everyone was like, they shouldn't have been there from China. And in this game, they were actually supposed to win this game, obviously. They're up massive. And you did like the craziest comeback, right? Give me some thoughts. Because on the one hand, when we later on point out you didn't make the playoffs, like a game like this, like in theory, you should have lost it. So it's not like you were playing the absolute best peak G2 League of Legends. But that comeback is like, what was it? Like 16k gold or 10k gold? So what was the number? It was something bonkers, right?
I think we were winning though. And then we threw.
And then you got the throwback. Yes.
And then we got the throwback. So it was just a complete banger game. I think the Weibo game, we had Orianna Zyrakan was our first 3, which given the way the tournament went, looking back, I think we had a pretty huge draft edge. So that was pretty cool. I was pretty happy with that one, that we managed to have a very good plan going to that, because those best of ones are like crazy variants. But this was another one where we felt like going into these best of ones that we were even or a bit better than these sorts of Asian teams, 3rd seeds, 4th seeds. So we weren't unsurprised to win these games or to be able to come back. Like it was a sort of thing where we knew it would be hard, but we felt we could do it, and I think we played really well.
If people don't know, when you actually get to the point where you've won 2-0, even though, this is why Swiss system in some ways, it's not a perfect system either. Like, for example, if you get Gen.G, right? Well, there's only a few teams have gone 2-0, so there can't be that many to pick from. Like, that's a pick your poison. It could have been Gen.G, these are all monsters. Yeah. But the reason I have a problem with it is when you then at the end of the Swiss system, you're like, what the hell, I had to play Gen.G, whereas maybe if someone goes through all the lower matches, maybe they never play that team. It's a weird factor in that sense. This Gen.G game, this one-off, was this winnable?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think in our boot camp, the 2 teams we struggled with the most were T1 and Gen for sure, the Korean teams, because I think they're just a bit harder to break. The LPL teams they just play a lot more aggressive and crazy, which leaves a lot more opportunity for us to win the skirmishes, especially when we're so very strong mechanically. And sometimes we would just snowball the games really hard and win. So I think we had a lot better results against the LPL teams, at least from what we saw. But Gen.G has kind of that more controlled, poke you out sort of gameplay, which for sure was not a good matchup for what we wanted to do. That being said, I think the first game we were winning, we're ahead, and then I think there's a top skirmish that goes very poorly that we really could have won and broke the game. We didn't, but like it comes down to this a lot, right? When you play teams that maybe are a bit better than you on the paper, where it looks good and then you get outplayed somewhere and you get outplayed somewhere again, right? So. Yeah, I think that one was a bit uphill for sure, but I think maybe the next 2 matches we lost to the World Championships had a bit more opportunity for us to win.
Yes, obviously the next one, let's be real, is it's the fulcrum that the whole tournament rests on. If you win this one, I mean, you're in the playoffs at that point in time. And the joke is you might even have ended up playing way more game, which is like a playable team, even the quarters.
Yeah, playable team, yes.
In this particular scenario, though, right? This is again where everyone just thinks you're going to be a fucking hater. Like, all I'll say is, guys, look at the roster of NRG. How many of you coming into Worlds went, yeah, definitely top 8. Yep. Oh, certainly. Oh, contracts probably be like a fucking pop-off jungler going say. Nobody thought that. I never saw a single NA fan say that. A lot of people were sort of like, well, I hope they have a chance, you know. Mate, that, especially game 1, I feel like they woke up and it's like fucking, what, did they have the spinach or something? The Popeye, what the fuck was happening? That game 1 was ridiculous. You can't have possibly imagined the series was going to be like this when you went into it.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about this day. It's definitely one of the saddest days for sure. We were in really bad condition for that day as a team. Probably one of our worst days condition-wise of the year. It's a bit of an excuse for sure, but it's also the reality of this situation. And when I reflected on this a lot, I think the two things come to mind is that we had very, very bad condition, and we also had a very passive plan. And I think these two things comboed very poorly, right? If you're not doing well, like physically, and you're doing a plan that's very passive, it's very easy to get run over. It's very easy for another team to kind of take the initiative in the game and start playing well, because although of course, I believe we're a better team than NRG, right? They're not bad. They won a championship themselves,
sure,
and they know how to win a game if given the opportunity. And I think they definitely had an extremely good day, and they played so well. So they deserve it, right? But of course, this is one thing in this tournament where I will always be wondering what if, because like this year we did take 5 games off of LCK and LPL teams, which like maybe it's not like a G2 2019, but that's like a decent amount of games throughout the year, and I really think we could have done something in the bracket stage if it was there.
And then the key thing here is this. This is why I have to just quickly explain to people why I hate the Swiss system. And it's very simple. I hate the randomized element of it, dude. Look, I understand it's difficult to construct other systems. You have to have seeding systems. There's reasons why in the league system it's not as obvious as Counter-Strike, where we all play the same tournaments and stuff. But if people don't know, if you think about it right, you could have had teams like, the joke is you could have had FNATIC. You could have had damn one again. Remember, you could play the same team twice here. You could have actually had you could have had Weibo, you could have had teams you've beaten this year. Like, essentially, the joke is, and KT roster also could have been hard. There's only 2 teams really people might say you want to avoid, and you got one of them, and arguably the best of the 2.
Yeah, I think we probably got the hardest team we could have drawn for that last round. And we had a relatively competitive.
It was competitive
series. We took a game, I guess, for sure, but I think they played well. Yeah, it's like, I don't want to complain about the draw when we had got to play against a North American team for not not the last seed, but for a middle seed out of Swiss.
Yes.
So I feel like it's kind of unfair to complain about draws when that's
even when 4 of the 5 are Asian teams.
Yeah,
that's pretty hard.
I guess we did have 4 to 5 Asian team matches, and some teams made it out without beating a single Asian team. Yeah, that is a truth of what happened in the bracket. But I don't know. Like, if we deserved to make it to World Semis, like if we were really playing well and if we had our condition for all the days, we would have won, right? So definitely a lot of what ifs. I will say that for this year.
What is your thoughts? Just Dylan Falco's thoughts, not G2's thoughts. What is Dylan Falco's thoughts about his boss posting? Not only do people cancel scrims, but we're winning all these scrims. Like, dude, that's, if people don't know, like, I don't wig out about it. I mean, obviously I want to know myself, but I think especially posting winning the scrims and the record, that is pretty fucking wild. Look, I know this guy literally does strip down and fucking paint his body nude each event, so he's certainly accustomed to bold moves, but that is a fucking very edgy move to actually tell people, like, oh, you know JDG, who people think is the greatest team ever, we were beating them most of the time. It's like, whoa, that's sort of considered behind the scenes like cardinal rule. You don't do that. That stays in the survey. You can maybe like allude to it in an interview. We're doing well in scrims or something. What do you think of this move to do this?
So actually, this whole thing started back in the day. Is I used to keep a cancel list of teams that would cancel scrims internally to kind of keep my team accountable. And I did this, I think, back when Falco, because I don't want to cancel scrims. I want to practice as much as possible, and I want us to be the team that never does it. And I want to show that to everyone. I obviously wasn't posting it publicly on Twitter. I brought this with me to G2. Romain really liked the idea, and then he posted the cancel list. We had this winter split where we got canceled like almost every other day, and this to us wasn't acceptable, right? Because we want our region. I want my region to do well. I want my team to do well. I want as much practice as possible, and this is just my mentality. And it was my mentality when I was on a low team as well, losing a lot of scrims. So I get to keep it now that I'm on a good team, and we're winning most of our scrims. And I guess it evolved into the thing where he just started sharing the full scrim results, because I think Romain really believes in the transparency, and he really likes letting the fans kind of know what it's like. I think showing the international, the world scrims, I think it does a couple things. First of all, I think it helps connect the kind of storyline of like, we really think we can compete internationally and win these tournaments, and we're not just getting smashed by them every single game. And if you look at the stage games, they're competitive, and the scrims we're winning. It's like there's a window, and we might be underdogs, but there's a window, and we believe it, and we want our fans to believe it as well. And if you lose and you post it, you just look mega salty for sure. Like there's yes, just no there's just no outplaying it. And Romain knows it looks mega salty, and we all know it looks mega salty, but he likes the transparency of it, and it's fine. Like we don't care if people type some oh my god, you're just mad, or you're just salty, you lost on stage comments, because they get to, because we lost. So that's fine. They can type that. It's deserved.
Right. Obviously, it is now known, obviously this was known very early in the off-season, there's going to be a run back. We're going to get the exact same roster again. Now, in light of what we've just discussed, like the scrim success, as you say, the LEC success was like, yeah, let's talk about that really bad failure, the time we came third and lost in 5 games, like to the team that won. Like, if that's like your worst moment domestically, yeah, you're the shit domestically. And then also internationally, like you say, individual games, you stacked up a bunch against the Asian teams. You just didn't win the big series. You didn't make the deep run. So people view it as utter failure, whereas it's not quite as bad as that, right? If you run it back with this lineup, like you say, there was a lot of promise in this year. There was a lot of reasons to believe, and a lot of draft areas that actually maybe didn't play out in the international ones, but maybe people, like I know people thought like some of the bot lane things coming into Worlds might actually throw these Asian teams off, or maybe they won't have the answer, or they won't have seen something like this. When you come back this year, what should the expectations be? I mean, in theory, they've got to be big, right?
Yeah, I want my team to continue to be aggressive. I think that's the one thing. I think going out with a passive plan on a bad day against NRG is a thing that I regret a lot. And that's something I will keep with me. I think that we're obviously not going to go full crazy early game all 5 lanes and get outscaled at 20 minutes. That's you can't do that in League of Legends. But that's kind of the philosophy I want to have. And I also just want to keep embodying that like mega try hard, practice more than every team, and set sights as high as possible kind of mindset, because I think that's like, it's good to have.
Do you have your own counter then? Because I would say the other great coach in the region currently is Mac from Mad Lions. And if people know, he always uses his platform in interviews to stress that he needs to, like mental health, and let's give people time. And, if we're going through a hard time, let's just laugh it off. And it's not, he sounds like in some ways, look, he's a winning coach. Some of his tendencies maybe go counter to yours. So is Dylan Falco a bit more old school in that sense? Are you really just like, get in there, boys, let's grind?
Yeah, I think I'm a bit different in that. Although we put so much effort to recovery, like we have multiple full-time staff members. We tracked food, the sleep, the rest periods, the meditation of all of the players. So it's like a mentality where we actually, it's not like we force it, but we do it. And we track it all for all of our players, so we can put in the extra hours. It's not like a rest first mentality. It's a rest so we can work even harder mentality.
What is the story of how a coach interacts with Caps? Because everyone's going to tell me he's the best Western player ever. He's as good as the Asian. But as every anecdote goes, dude, if we didn't see his games in the server, the anecdotes make him sound like a character from like Seinfeld or something. He just sounds like some wacky, fucking crazy guy. His in-game thing seems like a killer. Who is this guy? How do you get through to him? How do you coach him, mate?
Actually, the Seinfeld analogy might pass some of the younger viewers of this, but I think I know exactly what you mean. I think I like working with Caps a lot because although we're different in a lot of ways, we're also very similar in a lot of ways. We're both kind of goofy, awkward humans, and I think we connect on that level a lot. And we're both huge nerds about League of Legends, so I think it's a good combination. Me working with him, and I also think though most of the people who've worked with him have won a lot, so maybe there's something on the other hand that I get to benefit from. He just only has League of Legends in his life, right? That's basically, he commits everything to it, and I think.
Oh, people have heard this weird thing, right? That he doesn't have a mobile phone or something, right?
There were tournaments where he went without a phone, because he just wants to be fully committed to the game and stuff like that. These days he does have a phone.
Okay.
But I think there was a time at this World Championships where he went without his phone for a while because he thought it would be better. But that's the kind of mindset, it's just full focus on League of Legends, full love for League of Legends as well, and full passion for it. So it's just a huge thing to have on any team.
What's strange I wanted to ask about his personality is, on the one hand, I've definitely seen him. If people don't know, he doesn't express it publicly, but I definitely know when this, like, for example, if you don't get in the playoffs of Worlds, I can tell you right now, he's not happy with that. Like, that's a fucking downer for him, and he's going to think about it all off season long. And he's going to ask himself, what is my career? What am I going to do? But at the same time, one of the weirdest things as well is on the other end, when I've seen him like carry games against Faker, he actually almost seemed nonplussed by it. Like, either he thought it was funny or he didn't. It's almost like I wasn't sure. Like, you do know you just beat like the GOAT there. Like, who is this guy? There's something also unusual about the personality, right?
The game, the game against Weibo where it went to like 6 items and there was like base races and it was like huge, stressful late game. Like everyone on our team was like go here, do this. Okay, what can we do? And like, I won't say they're stressed because actually our team was pretty good under pressure at this World Championships, but it's very heightened. And through all of it, Caps was just giggling. He was just giggling and be like, I'm just going to try and go end the game here. Like he was just like, yeah, I think I'm just going to go end the game here, guys. Just come. And he's just laughing. And I don't know how he does that. Like I can't personally backstage. Like I'm a wreck in those moments. And I think that's a lot of why he's good in these like massive game 5 base race scenarios, because he can actually just be having fun playing game, in those moments.
This will sound like a weird question, but I'll make it funny. So you are from Canada, part of North America. I know Americans make it sound like the United States is North America, but that is their way. They are Americans.
Yeah.
We've all gotten used to it. So the obvious question is, you did coach there. It's just that wasn't the best part of your career, right? Why are you always coaching in Europe? Like, why not coach? Do you not love North America? Why not go back to North America and take North America to the top?
Well, the European teams are a bit stronger over the years, I would say. I feel like you can work with more talent. I feel like the scene is a lot bigger, especially these days. And I also feel like I connect a lot more with the European way of doing things, a lot more try hard, a lot more passionate, a lot more outspoken, honest vibes, I would say. And I felt even from the first time I started switching and coaching a European team that it was a much better fit for me, I would say.
At the end of your career, you have coached the who's who of what would be like the first 2 ballot halls of fame of European talent. Like if I could make an actual like 2 super teams to play against each other of the players you've coached. Like you've had it. It's funny in your career. You've had the ups and downs, but you've had some amazing talents at times, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. And even when I even have like names like Bjergsen and Dyrus and names like this from NA and Huni, Rainover, like it's actually crazy. I think that's just part of having a long career, because like teams are shuffling around all the time, and you just over the years end up working with like a bunch of huge names. But I'm definitely on the luckier end for sure to work with some crazy players. It's pretty fun, and the fun thing is also like you get to kind of like share stories of all the different teammates and players you work with all the different teams and stuff, and it's always fun talking to like other players and stuff about all.
I have a strange question. That's one of my last questions then. So I'll give you a quick analogy of my life, right? I used to be someone, believe it or not, this is way before anyone knew me in esports, but I was on camera. I used to think of myself as quite unlucky, Dylan. If anything happened and went wrong, I'd be like, oh, that always happens to me, you know. And what I did is, it's not that suddenly that my luck turned around. I just decided one day, oh, I'm looking at this all wrong. Like what I need to do is, I'm only focusing on the area that I get unlucky. And I'm actually not looking. Like sometimes I get lucky to get into the position to get unlucky. Sometimes something else in my life went awesome, and because it went awesome, I didn't pay attention to the success there. So what's funny is if you looked at the first half of this interview, it's cursed as fuck, mate. It's regionals every time, lose every playoffs, look awesome, so all the fan hype's there, and then it's like maybe even if you didn't have the best roster, so I think you should be number one, and then you don't win, so you fucking bomb, it's all your fault. But then the latter half, like I say, it's like you're just being machine gunned all the best players in Europe in all combos, and you're getting all this success. You're winning championships, world finals, MSI 24 games. Do you consider yourself a lucky person, Dylan?
I think getting myself into the situations in esports and the first rosters were incredibly lucky. Like I think like the fact that I got to work with rookie Caps in his first season, just based on someone I worked with who said, "Oh yeah, he's kind of good at coaching," or the YouTube video into working for the most popular team in the West. Like I think these moments in particular in my career are like insanely lucky. I do think over the years I've improved so much at being a coach that at least getting those breaks and now being on like a top team, I think that's at least part to do with like just becoming better and better at something. And I'm lucky to be early enough in the scene where I've gotten to like good enough to be on a decent team.
Right. Normally, people are supposed to give the PR answer. And it's like I actually did this in my speech when I won the esports award, mate. I started about how, you're supposed to say there's a lot of colleagues here. They do excellent work. Any of them would be, they should win this award. Now, I didn't do that. I then flipped into the idea that, like, listen, I fucking worked hard for this, mate. I had to grind. I had to get my level up. Like, you know what? I'll take what's mine. Like, I believe in the rule of conquest, mate. So I always do this. I always try to get Youngbuck, Grabs. I like all these people. I try to get them to talk their shit. So here's the thing, mate. If I put your resume up, isn't Dylan Falco the best Western coach ever?
I don't like that. And if I win an international title, if I win like an MSI, I'll find being cocky like that, but I think until then, it's a wash because there's coaches that have done like Grabs won an international title, which is like so much far above anything I've ever done. And Joy, I think even won more splits than me, and so much more. Right. So I think it's like it's all just a wash. We're all just coaching players, and sometimes our teams are good, sometimes our teams are bad. But if I win a title, then sure, I'll go.
Is it the case that when people are knowledgeable about league and they're playing the coaching game, which in many ways it can be a chess match, it can be all sorts of things, you work with the players, there's the whole human element of all that. Is it the sense that I get the vibe from the ones I talk to? One of the reasons they say it's addictive is, whereas people complain in the game, like, maybe the skill cap only goes so far, I get the sense like the coaching cap's infinite. It doesn't matter how good you are, there's always things to learn and work on and a new technique. Is that addictive to you? Does that excite you?
So the coaching cap is infinite, and I think the way you can like strategize and like make plans is it's not infinite technically, but it's massive and huge for sure. That being said, you're always kind of like capped by the talent of your players. So if you're on a top team versus a lower team, you have that cap. So I think it works in both ways. Like you can increase them percentage wise, like you can eke out more and more and more, but you always have like a talent thing, right? The people that are coaching the top, I don't know, like let's say T1 last year, they can do more, right, than someone that's coaching Astralis, for example.
Who is the most underrated player Dylan Falco coached?
The most underrated player that I've ever coached. Oh my gosh. Maybe. So the meme used to be that set is overrated, right? That was
yes,
on that
of
one.
Course, yes.
Okay. I think maybe I would say Huni. Actually, probably. Because back then,
I will say one of the narratives is people make it sound like he only had hands and he's an idiot,
Yeah, I think Huni, because everything he did to kill the Nexus and lead the team and lead every single review and shot call the whole game and carry and take it all on his shoulders and win so many games. I would say Huni.
At the end of this interview, Dylan, do you have a final message? Do you have someone you want to thank or say hello to?
I guess always you're supposed to thank the fans. Thank you for the fans. I think the esports is nothing without them. And thanks for all the people who following me throughout the years. I'm really excited actually for next year. So if you're watching this video before 2024, I hope we do well, because I just want to compete and have fun.
When I make content, it isn't just me, the mic, and a guest or a topic. It's also me with the support of my whole crew. Who's that, you might ask? The Skrilluminati. That's who. They include Frisky, Matt Pugnaccio Racula, Ahmed Hadju, Tosh, Tobias Bernasconi, Jensen Gore, Animosity, Toucan, and you know it if you've heard it before, but if you haven't, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Well, if you want to know upcoming topics and guests I'm going to have on my channel, maybe you want to ask me a question to answer in an AMA in video fashion. Do you want to hear one of those long discussions and actually be part of it and be able to ask me questions? Want to find out who I'm going to interview next? If any of these perks or more appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.